In the stillness of a forgotten cemetery, a 10-year-old girl named Lily knelt before a grand neglected tombstone. Every single day, she'd carefully place a bright yellow dandelion at its base. It was a silent promise she made, a tiny speck of colour in a world that felt grey. What she didn't know was that just beyond the iron fence, from the back of a silent black car, she was being watched. And the man watching her, the man whose name was carved on that stone, was very much alive. Lily was the new kid in town, and loneliness felt like her shadow. Her family had moved for her dad's job, leaving behind everything she'd ever known. Her new school was just a sea of unfamiliar faces, and her walk home was always quiet. The path led her right past the old Crestwood Cemetery, a place most people avoided. But for Lily, the silence was comforting. One afternoon, a particular headstone caught her eye. It was huge, way bigger than the others, an imposing slab of dark granite. The name Arthur Pendleton was etched in bold letters, and below it, a grim epitaph: The End. But what really struck her was how forgotten it was. Other graves had flowers and flags, but this one was surrounded by weeds. It looked just as lonely as she felt. Something shifted in her. The next day, she spotted a stubborn wildflower pushing through a crack in the sidewalk. She plucked it and, without thinking, carried it to Arthur Pendleton's grave. She cleared away a few weeds and set the flower right below his name. It was a small gesture, one that nobody would ever see, but it made her feel a little less alone. This became her ritual. A purple clover one day, a white daisy the next. Each day, she brought a single wildflower for the man whose grave felt as lonely as her heart. She'd tell him about her day, a mean comment from a classmate, a tricky math problem, the time a teacher actually smiled at her. That cold stone was the best listener she'd ever had. From his car on the street bordering the cemetery, Arthur Pendleton watched. And at first, he was just irritated. For 30 years, nobody had paid any attention to that plot of land. He'd bought it decades ago, a grim monument to the day his life had pretty much ended the day he lost his wife and daughter in a car crash. The ambitious, happy man he used to be was gone, leaving a cold, reclusive millionaire who ran his empire from a desolate mansion. He had his driver take this route out of some self-punishing habit, a daily reminder of what he'd lost. Then, this little girl showed up. He watched her day after day, with her small, solemn face and her offering of a single, humble flower. It was absurd. Who was this kid? And why this grave? His annoyance slowly turned into a grudging curiosity. He actually started looking for her. He'd tell his driver to wait, delaying his return home just to see the small figure with the backpack appear. He noticed the flowers changed each day, and how she'd sometimes trace the letters of his name with her finger. He saw the sadness in the way she carried herself, a solitude that felt so much like his own. One week, a brutal storm hit the town. It rained for 5 straight days. Arthur found himself pacing the empty halls of his house, agitated. His driver, a man who had worked for him for 20 years and barely heard him speak, was shocked when Arthur snapped. "Will this rain ever end?" He wasn't worried about his gardens. He was thinking about the girl. The day the storm finally passed, the path to the grave was a mess of mud and branches. Before his driver could even start the car, Arthur gave a curt order. "Get someone to clear the path to my plot. Now." Within an hour, the walkway was perfect. That afternoon, when Lily arrived, she just noticed the path was clear and dry. She smiled, thinking it was a small kindness from the world, and placed a bright blue forget-me-not on the stone. From his car, Arthur watched her smile, and a strange, unfamiliar warmth flickered in his chest. As autumn started to turn the leaves orange and red, Arthur's daily watching began to feel like a strange kind of friendship. He learned her routine, the little bounce in her step on Fridays, the way she'd sit a little longer when the sun was out. One afternoon, she dropped a school book. The pages fluttered open, showing a drawing inside. She snatched it up, but not before Arthur saw it. A sketch of a smiling family. A lump formed in his throat. He had to know more about her. He had his assistant do a little digging, and the story was simple. Her name was Lily. Her family was struggling a bit, and the move had been hard on their only child. She was just a lonely little girl. The near miss happened on a crisp October day. Lily was so caught up in telling the headstone she'd won the school spelling bee that she didn't hear footsteps behind her. Arthur, driven by an impulse he didn't understand, had actually gotten out of the car. He wanted to… what? He wasn't sure. He stood just a few feet away, hidden by a large oak tree, listening, and the word was, sincerely, "Mr. Pendleton. I got it right," she chirped. His heart ached. The name on the grave was his, but the person she was talking to, this silent, kind friend, felt like a complete stranger to him. He took a half step forward, a word on his lips, but then he backed away. Not now. He got back in the car, his mind a storm of emotions he hadn't felt in 30 years. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was invested. Her small, simple acts of kindness were chipping away at the fortress he'd built around his heart. The first snow of the season came early, blanketing the cemetery in white. Lily made her way to the grave, her boots crunching in the snow, a sprig of winter holly in her hand. But when she got closer, she saw she wasn't alone. An old man in a thick wool coat was standing by the grave with his back to her. She stopped, unsure. The man turned slowly. His face was weathered and grim, but his eyes were a piercing grey. He looked from her to the tombstone. "Do you visit here often?" he asked, his voice raspy, like he wasn't used to talking. Lily clutched her holly. "Every day," she whispered. The man's expression softened, just barely. "Why this one?" Lily looked at the name on the stone. "Because it looked lonely," she said simply. "When we moved here, I didn't have any friends. I felt lonely all the time. And this grave, it had no flowers. No one ever came. I thought maybe he was lonely, too." The old man just stared at her. And for a second, Lily thought she saw his eyes glisten. He took a shaky breath. "He was," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "He was very, very lonely. He thought his life was over, a long time ago." He looked down at the name carved in the stone. Then he looked back at her. "My name," he said, "is Arthur Pendleton." Lily's eyes went wide. She was so confused. "But you're alive?" "Yes," he said with a faint, sad smile. "The man I used to be, the one who loved life, he died 30 years ago. I bought this plot to bury that man. But I was wrong," he gestured toward her. "You, with your little flowers, you spent weeks tending to the grave of a grumpy old man who had forgotten how to live." He looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes was replaced by a deep, heartbreaking gratitude. "You brought him back to life, Lily. You brought me back to life." That day in the quiet cemetery, two lonely souls found a friend. Arthur didn't offer Lily money or grand gifts. He gave her something much more valuable, his time. He learned her family was struggling, so he offered her father a better job at his company. He learned she loved flowers, so he invited her to help him bring his overgrown, neglected mansion garden back to life. A garden that hadn't been touched since his wife passed away. Slowly but surely, colour returned to both their lives. The forgotten garden began to bloom, and the lonely halls of the mansion were filled with laughter again. Lily wasn't the lonely new girl anymore, and Arthur was no longer the grumpy millionaire hiding from the world. It all started with a little girl who just wanted to soothe a stranger's loneliness, and ended up saving a man who didn't even know he needed to be found. It just goes to show, you never really know the impact of a small act of kindness. If you believe in the power of kindness, share this story with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove that a little bit of hope can go a long way.